So there you are, just doing a basic overhead press, and all of a sudden that starts happening. What's that all about? Going to talk about that and a whole lot more coming up in 2 seconds. Welcome, I'm John of John Health and Fitness. Today we're going to talk about compensations, or the way form goes bad and why. Before I go any further, I will timestamp the sections of this video so you can jump around to the sections that interest you. Let's start right away with that overhead press. Now a basic overhead press, we'll just keep it simple right now, is to exercise the shoulders. Again, it's a simplified version. You start doing that, pressing it straight overhead, basically working those shoulders. When all of a sudden you start leaning back, and you might do this and you don't even know it necessarily, especially if it's subtle at first. But you start leaning back to get those weights overhead. Why is that happening? Well, while you might know that you're just trying to do a fitness workout and you're trying to target some specific muscles, your body instinctively understands that all you're trying to do is raise a weight over your head. It's going to find a way to do that unless you pay very special attention to simply accomplish that task. And the way to accomplish that task is to take the load off the now fatiguing and tiring muscles and get it onto some muscles that's fresher and that can get the job done. In this case, the chest. As you lean back like that, you're almost doing a standing incline bench press, which, by the way, this is not at all safe. Not good for your back at all. A little bit of compensation is okay, but as it gets extreme, it can actually get a little bit dangerous. So what can you do about that? Well, you can just lighten your weight. You either lighten your weight from the very beginning, particularly if you're doing that compensation early on, or if it's something where you're tiring, say towards the end of your set, you can put those weights down to a drop set, pick up something a little lighter, finish the set. Or if it's a relatively subtle compensation, just a little bit, you can finish off the set a couple of reps at the end. Let's look at another exercise. Go to the core. So you're doing some hip ups, you're just raising a hip. This one's intended to target the obliques, those muscles on the side of your core. What I'll often see, and you might have noticed this in yourself, that as you fatigue, that top shoulder starts leaning forward. Why is that? Well, what the body's trying to do is trying to employ those ab muscles now. As your obliques are fatigued, they just can't get the job done anymore, you start leaning forward, trying to employ those muscles some. Now again, this is a workout. You don't necessarily want to work muscles at that particular point in time. You'll get to those later. In fact, a basic core workout, often you kind of roll around the core. You're working the abs and the obliques and the back and so forth. So when you're targeting the obliques, you want to try to really target those obliques. You really do want to avoid just pulling that shoulder forward because you're not working the muscles you want to work. What can you do about that? Well, you don't necessarily have to do hip ups on your feet. You can drop to a bent knee. You can start with your hips all the way on the floor and lift up. There's a lot of ways to limit that. If you can't do hip up at all, just work the obliques in other ways, such as the side reachers or some bicycles. Let's look at one more. It's a little bit different. This is a wide row. All right, you're pulling that elbow all the way out to the side. You're trying to work those mid-back muscles, the rhomboids, middle trapezius, and the like. So what happens here as you tire, and I'll see this a lot, is you start tucking that arm in. This is kind of a matter of physics. You're trying to get that weight or that resistance closer to the fulcrum to make it a little bit easier. And while you're doing that, you're starting to engage the brachioradialis, here primarily in your forearm. So you're working that muscle that you might not want to work, and you're kind of limiting the weight. This is less of a big deal. It's not particularly dangerous, but you should be aware that you're working a muscle you're not necessarily trying to work at that particular point in time. And maybe that weight's just too heavy. And again, what you would do is start maybe with a lighter weight. If it's always like that, you're kind of tucking that thing into your armpit there. Or a drop set. If you've got quite a few number of reps to go, you can drop that weight, pick up a slightly lighter weight. Or if you got like 2 more reps to go, let it tuck in. It's not that big a deal. You can finish the set off. And so I think if you understand why you're doing compensations, why am I leaning this way, leaning that way, why is my shoulder coming forward? If you understand it's because the muscles you're trying to work are tiring, I think it'd be really helpful. You know you've basically exhausted that muscle. At that point, you've gotten to your max rep range, maybe earlier than you thought, maybe earlier than you expected. Maybe just for that one session, you can go into a workout session where you're more fatigued than you realize. You usually can pull off 12 reps of, say, 25 pounds overhead. Today it's just not happening. Just lower the weight. It's better to lower the weight, practice good, safe form, work the muscles you want to work, rather than doing all kinds of crazy compensations. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have any examples you'd like to add to the conversation, that would be great. Hope you found this helpful, and if you did, think about subscribing, hitting that alert bell. If you don't hit the alert bell, you'll never see me again. That's just how it works. We do exercise, nutrition, and motivation here. It's the trifecta of fitness, basically. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.